فاستمسك بالذي أوحي إليك إنك على صراط مستقيم وإنه لذكر لك ولقومك.
Good evening and welcome to a new episode of Mishkat Al-Tanwir. We will answer, my dear viewers, in tonight's episode two important questions. How were 1,000 years lost between the Quran and the Renaissance? And how did Muslims lose 1,000 years of scientific progress? God Almighty inaugurated the project of human guidance with the word read, Iqra, not with rituals, ceremonies, or detailed rulings. The purpose then is to establish a global nation that reads the universe just as it reads the book, reads reality just as it reads revelation, reads history to learn from it, not to be its captive, and reads the future to make it, not to wait for it. Therefore, read is a divine declaration of the birth of the free mind and the beginning of a civilizational project where knowledge is the foundation of all human renaissance. That is why the Quran is filled with hundreds of verses that stimulate thinking, observation, research, and discovery, because it came to create a human being with the ability to understand, deduce, discover, and bear responsibility, not a follower who repeats what he hears. Here we understand why the great thinker, our Professor Ali Muhammad Al-Shorafaa Al-Hammadi, cited and began his important foundational article titled God's Call to Liberate Minds with two verses from Surat Al-Baqarah. That is a nation which has passed on. It will have what it earned, and you will have what you have earned, and you will not be asked about what they used to do. After that, the Quran repeated the exact same meaning a second time in the same surah. These two verses establish one of the greatest principles of mental liberation in the Holy Quran, the principle of the independence of human responsibility across time. The verses contain two civilizational laws: the independence of responsibility, meaning every generation has its own responsibility and its own deductions, ijtihad, tied to temporal, spatial, and cognitive circumstances, and the law of clearing future liability. We are not responsible for the deductions of predecessors. God will not hold us accountable for what they understood, their practices, their actions, their mistakes, their sins, or what they did. He will hold us accountable for how we used our minds, how we dealt with our current reality, and the challenges we face. Thus, the Holy Quran clearly separates the responsibility of predecessors and successors, establishing that every generation is responsible before God for its own understanding, work, diligence, and contribution to building life, or the lack thereof. A human being does not bear the sins, mistakes, and burdens of predecessors, nor should they suspend their mind under the pretext that everything has been said and done. This, my dears, is tantamount to a true Quranic revolution against historical guardianships and a divine declaration that time does not stop at a specific generation, and that human diligence remains tied to their circumstances, knowledge, and capabilities. The Holy Quran, with its guidance, remains capable of guiding successive generations as they face renewed challenges unknown to those before them. In this way, turning heritage into an authority above time is a deviation from the purpose of the Holy Quran, because God Almighty did not give anyone guardianship over human minds, nor did He make a specific generation the ultimate end in understanding religion and life. Therefore, every era carries its own trust, and every generation is required to read its reality with its mind, face the challenges of its time with the tools of its time, and employ the guidance of the Holy Quran to produce new solutions for new problems. When we look at the world today, my dears, we discover the depth of this Quranic truth. Humanity today faces challenges unknown to our predecessors in this scale and complexity: artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, renewable energy, food security, water scarcity, climate change, space exploration, accelerating digital revolutions, and more. These are issues we cannot deal with using ready-made answers from hundreds of years ago. They require a living mind that moves within Quranic guidance and invests everything God Almighty has deposited in humans regarding the ability to think, innovate, research, and discover. Building knowledge, my dears, is part of the divine mandate itself, for the human being was created to be a vicegerent on earth. And vicegerency is not achieved through ignorance, inability to understand reality, or disconnection from the movement of discovery and innovation. Every scientific leap achieved by humanity today and yesterday began with a question. Every discovery began with observation. Every invention began with an attempt to understand God's laws in the universe, which God made subservient to humans. God created man to inhabit the earth according to the methodology of truth, goodness, and justice, and then subjected to him what is in the earth and the heavens, opening the doors of the universe for him to discover its laws, benefit from its bounties, and turn its resources into civilization, development, mercy, and growth. Therefore, science is part of the mission of vicegerency. Scientific research is a form of fulfilling the trust carried by humans. Innovation, development, and discovering cosmic laws are a practical response to God Almighty's command to read, learn, reflect, and seek more knowledge. And say, "My Lord, increase me in knowledge." The message that the Quran brought, my dears, from the moment of its revelation until today is that man was created to produce knowledge, build civilization, be a partner in discovering the secrets of the universe, and harness all of this for the good of humanity. This is exactly what makes the call of our great thinker Ali Muhammad Al-Shorafaa Al-Hammadi to liberate minds a call that transcends the boundaries of intellectual debate into a civilizational project. It reconnects man with the first message that began with the word read and still calls on humanity to this day to open its minds to the vastness of the universe, employ knowledge for development, and use science as a path to mercy and progress, and a tool to serve man and fulfill the divine purpose of his existence on earth. My dears, we move with our Professor Al-Shorafaa to a deeper question. What does the Quran offer the world after liberating the mind? The astonishing answer is that the Quran offers an integrated system for organizing human life and building civilization on the foundations of justice, cooperation, peace, mercy, and human solidarity. The Quran presents man as part of a major network of integrated relationships, a relationship with the Lord Almighty, a relationship with the self, a relationship with others, a relationship with nature, and a relationship with the entire universe. That is why the great Quranic values emerged: justice, mercy, benevolence, cooperation, mutual acquaintance, loyalty, honesty, and respect for human dignity as the foundation upon which a good life and stable human civilization are built. When we contemplate the Quran, we find that the ultimate goal of divine legislation is serving man, protecting his interests, and achieving his security, safety, and happiness. God says, "Whoever does righteousness, whether male or female, while he is a believer, we will surely cause him to live a good life." The good life is a civilizational project in which social justice is achieved, dignity and rights are preserved, human dignity is respected, and the means of science, work, production, and progress are available. Thus, Quranic legislation is an integrated life system aimed at creating a human being capable of building the earth and achieving good for himself and others. That is why the Quranic approach has remained valid for every time and place, because it was not built on temporary historical details, and because it was founded on universally stable cosmic values capable of keeping pace with the transformations of eras and changing conditions. Justice remains justice in the early centuries, just as it is justice in the era of artificial intelligence. Mercy remains a human necessity in the time of caravans, just as it is a necessity today in the age of space and robots. Cooperation remains the basis for the prosperity of societies and nations together, no matter how much economic, technological, and lifestyle forms differ. Therefore, the Holy Quran addresses man in terms of his shared humanity, placing in his hands general principles capable of guiding the march of civilization across different times without losing their validity or ability to inspire. Our great Professor Al-Shorafaa, my dears, draws attention to something important. The integration between man and the universe is an inherent part of the Quranic and divine approach, just as integration among humans themselves is the rule upon which civilization is built. Civilizations flourish when minds cooperate, experiences are exchanged, and knowledge is shared, whereas conflicts, divisions, prejudices, and splits lead to draining energies and stalling the march of progress. The massive scientific progress achieved by Western civilization was based on respecting empirical and scientific research, observation, experimentation, and discovering natural laws. These are the principles that the Holy Quran pushes towards in dozens of verses, commanding reflection, observation, traveling through the earth, and discovering God's laws in creation. That is why modern civilization converged with Islam in the methods of empirical scientific research, even if it did not stem from the Quranic reference itself. Of course, the painful paradox appears. Muslims were the most deserving of this path if the Quran had remained their supreme reference in understanding the universe and life, and if they had continued to develop the scientific method started by Al-Razi, Al-Biruni, Ibn al-Haytham, Al-Khwarizmi, Jabir ibn Hayyan, and other pioneers of human knowledge. But what happened historically is that vast areas of mental effort shifted from discovering the laws of the universe to arguing over narratives, sectarian differences, and limitless jurisprudential details. These accumulated over the centuries until many people began reading the Quran through concepts, cultures, and references that emerged hundreds of years after the Quran's revelation. Interest in the Holy Quran itself as the primary source of concepts, terminology, values, and the cosmic and civilizational vision declined. Francis Bacon, one of the philosophers of the Renaissance and Enlightenment who founded the modern scientific method, called this in his book Novum Organum, The Idols of the Theater. These are the illusions that infiltrate the human mind as a result of submission and subjugation to old systems and philosophies, blindly imitating the words of previous men without criticism or examination, the idols of the theater. My dears, if the cosmic and scientific verses in the Holy Quran had been dealt with in the spirit of research and discovery that the early Muslim scholars used with God's book and the open book of the universe, the entire course of human history might have been different. Long centuries of backwardness, stagnation, and sterile conflicts that consumed all human energies, not just the Islamic nations, and hindered their contribution to building global civilization, might have been shortened. The question that imposes itself, my dears, what would have happened if Muslims had continued building from the point reached by Ibn al-Haytham, al-Biruni, al-Razi, al-Farabi, Jabir ibn Hayyan, and others? What if the movement of research, experimentation, and discovery had continued without being replaced by a culture of imitation and preoccupation with the past, its conflicts, and its heritage? What if the Quran had remained the primary source of inspiration for the Muslim mind in understanding the universe and harnessing knowledge to serve humanity? Perhaps if this had happened, humanity would have spared itself long centuries of suffering. Perhaps the world would have witnessed an early birth of many discoveries that changed human life later on. Therefore, the call of our great thinker, Ali Muhammad Al-Shorafaa Al-Hammadi, is a call to resume the civilizational path initiated by the Quran since its revelation, and to rebuild the relationship between man and revelation, and the relationship between the mind and the universe, so that knowledge becomes a path to civilization, and scientific progress remains a servant to the great human values intended by God Almighty for all His servants, for all humanity. Thus, the tragedy of the mind over long centuries, as described by our Professor Ali Muhammad Al-Shorafaa Al-Hammadi, is that of nations that inherited the torches of light and the holy divine revelation, but unfortunately settled for sanctifying the ashes. The disaster is that the past transforms from a memory into a permanent residence in the early centuries, so that the current reality becomes an image and reflection of the early centuries, and the opinions and sayings of the ancestors become walls that block the horizon. The amazing, miraculous, and renewed genius of the Quran is that it constantly returns man to the movement of life, the responsibility of the present, and the horizon of the future. It reminds him that God did not create the mind to be a museum for old ideas. God created the mind to be a permanent workshop for discovery, building, creativity, and civilization. We will continue, God willing, with the article and its treatment, this important and foundational article, in upcoming episodes, God willing. See you then.